Hi, everyone. Welcome to Making Classical Music More Accessible for Disabled Adults. Today we have with us Dav Shiel. He is a session drummer with a background in inclusive music making and education. He has taught music in SEND schools for a number of years, as well as facilitating inclusive music ensembles aimed at disabled and non-disabled young adults and young people and adults, collaborating with orchestras such as London Symphony Orchestra and London Philharmonic Orchestra. Dav is an experienced technologist and has worked as an associate musician and project manager with Drake Music for a number of years, delivering on flagship projects including Soundbox in collaboration with LSO and Thames Music Service. He's also done collaborations with OrchLab with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Dav is also an endorser of the Sounds of Intent framework of musical development. And with that, I will hand over to Dav.
Okay, thanks, Ahmed. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here with you all today. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about OrchLab, which is a project that I run with an organization I work for called Drake Music, and it's a partnership project with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. So I'll give you a bit of background first. Hi, Jamie. Nice to meet you. It's funny, I can't see how many people are here. Oh, no, wait, yeah, 12. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I haven't been on Zoom for a little while. I work at Drake Music as a project manager, a workshop leader, and a trainer. And the main project I work on is OrchLab. And this is a long-term partnership between Drake Music and the London Philharmonic Orchestra. So if you're not familiar with Drake Music and what we do, we basically work at the intersection between music, technology, and disability. And OrchLab is basically about creating an accessible kind of environment for disabled people to make music and to explore classical music with players from the London Philharmonic Orchestra. I come from a community music background rather than a music tech background, and that's been a big learning journey for me. So I think we're going to sort of have a chat later on. I might not be able to answer all your technical questions, but I'll try my best. So OrchLab supports music making and music appreciation with disabled adults. And we do this in a variety of ways. We run music workshops, accessible music workshops. We design and build accessible instruments, and we use existing assistive technology and things like that to create a level playing field when we are making music together. We then have a website, which we're going to have a peek at in a while. And this contains a lot of specially made music activities and various resources, and also some browser-based musical instruments, which we'll also look at a little bit later on. And we also run training for the staff of the centres that we work in. We basically go into residential settings where disabled adults live, and we run music workshops there. And we also train the staff in how to kind of continue the legacy after we leave. Otherwise, it's just this fun project, and then once we've gone, nothing else continues. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm going to focus more on the workshops and the accessible instrument strand of the project tonight. But I thought it might be good, instead of me just blabbing on about it, to watch a video, which is a kind of overview video of OrchLab. It'll probably describe things a bit better than I can. It's good to see what the workshops look like. So yes, thank you. If that's ready, just go for it. Thank you very much for sharing that. Did anyone recognize any of the accessible instruments that we were using there in that video? Little pub quiz. Just thought I would ask if anyone has any experience using any existing assistive technology for making music. Put it in the chat. Okay, well, yeah, we use things like sound beams, which is an infrared beam that you just pass anything through and it'll make sound, and various other assistive technology. But basically, what you might have seen in that video were our touch instruments, which are adapted classical instruments. There was a touch trombone there and a touch oboe. So I'm going to talk about them and I'm going to show you them as well, because I actually have them here. This is another little camera I've got. So here we have our touch trombone, which, as you can see, is a real trombone, but it's been adapted. And then we have an oboe over here, a touch oboe. Oh, thank you for spotlighting. Fantastic. Okay, great. Right, I'm just going to pop that back down. Oh, I can now see myself twice, which is more than enough. Yeah, so let's have a look at the touch instruments. Basically, we realized during this project that we could recreate the sound of various classical instruments, but we couldn't recreate that feel, that kind of tactile sensation of playing an instrument for people who might not be able to access a trombone because they maybe don't have breath control, or they might not be able to play an oboe because they don't have breath control, etc. So yeah, we realized that a lot of traditional classical musical instruments just aren't very accessible. And a lot of the people we work with have limited mobility and other access needs. So yeah, we wanted to create a bridge between accessible technology and traditional instruments. So you may be wondering why we chose the oboe and the trombone. And the reason is that we were in our workshops, we always have 3 players from the London Philharmonic Orchestra in the workshops with us, which is a joy, by the way, because almost every day I get to hear 3 of the best instrumentalists in their league just kind of warming up at 10 in the morning when I'm a bit sleepy. So it's quite fun. So we've been working with a trombonist a lot from the LPO, and we've been working with an oboist as well. So we thought it'd be really, really nice to create these partnership, this potential for musical partnerships between one of the best oboists in the world and a musician who has never played an oboe before and maybe hasn't had much access to musical instruments at all, but they're playing the same instrument on a level playing field. And the hope was that the instruments would allow disabled musicians in OrchLab to play trombone and oboe duets on instruments that look, sound, and work in as similar a way as possible to the traditional instruments. There's a visual and very tactile kind of impact to those to using the real instruments. Although it might have been easier to 3D print a completely new instrument that looked a bit like a trombone or an oboe, we decided to go with adapting traditional ones. So we worked with some amazing technologists who prototyped these designs for us. So both of the instruments work purely with touch as the primary trigger for sound. So this means that they can both be played without any need for breath control or blowing, which makes them much more accessible for disabled people. So the 2 instruments enable music making at different levels of engagement as well. All you have to do is touch it and it'll make a sound. So that's me touching the trombone here. I hope you can hear. Maybe, do I need to turn on original sound for musicians? How about that? Can you all hear that? We probably should have done a little sound check before this. Nice. Okay, so it has that immediate cause and effect. So someone with a cognitive impairment, they are going to learn quite quickly that if they touch it, it's going to make a sound. It's as simple as that. But also there is room for development and actually, ways to learn this as an instrument. We didn't want it just to be something that you could immediately master. With all instruments, there's got to be a level of progression, right? So let's look at the trombone first. So basically you just touch it, you slide it, and it'll play a scale for you. So I currently have it set to a C minor scale. Let's have a look at the close here. So there's a little LED screen here where you can change the key and the scale. So it's quite easy to create a harmonious environment where if you're all working on a piece of music that's in C minor, we can set all these instruments to C minor and it's going to immediately sound quite nice. Although you can then also try things that are more complicated. So what you can also do is, excuse me, this is a bit fiddly. If I hold it here, for this you would need 2 hands. I can play a note, I can then jump. So instead of just sliding up and down and only having that as an option, you can create melodies by jumping around. Etc. Now, one thing that we're still working on is the quality of the sound. I know it doesn't exactly sound like a real trombone, and that's something that we are working on. It's quite hard to do that with the limitations of the hardware, because we want it to be completely freestanding, so it can be moved around and things like that. What else can I say about the trombone? Basically, the whole trombone acts as a kind of single large surface trigger for notes. And there's a sensor underneath here that kind of measures the slide. You can set it so it fully slides in the sound. I'll show you what I mean. So we're in a C minor scale, but if I go to the settings and go to scale, we've got major pentatonic, minor, blues scale. So I keep touching it. If I keep going, we'll get to slide. So now it'll fully slide, much more like a real trombone. So then there's room for learning exactly where you have to touch it and how far you've moved the slide for it to work, but you still don't have to blow through it. So the oboe works very similarly. This is the oboe. It has a similar LED screen, and then it has buttons here. Oh, sorry. These are still prototypes, I must say. They sometimes malfunction. But what we found in the workshops is that it's just fantastic for people who've never had the opportunity to play these instruments, to then be able to play duets with other musicians. I mean, it's just fantastic. The other things, the more technical side of things, basically the sounds are synthesized on a small microcontroller. You can change the key, you can change the type of scale, you can change the timbre and you can change the volume quite easily just with a normal volume pot. The sounds can then be sent out of an inbuilt speaker. So in the trombone, the speaker is actually in the bell of the speaker here, and that means the sound is coming from where you would imagine the sound would come from with a trombone. And you can also plug in an external speaker as well if you want it to be a bit louder. Also, because the instruments have a wooden base, if it's sitting on someone's knee, you do get some nice tactile kind of feedback and vibration through the wood, which gives it quite a real instrument feel as well. So if you would like to know the technical side of things, this is not my area. I did not make these. I helped in the kind of design and testing phases. But basically the sounds were designed using Faust, the Faust programming language, which let us get sounds which are quite close to trombone and oboe, but also they were running on the processing power of the microcontroller. Both instruments use an MPR121 capacitive touch sensor, and the trombone uses a roller along a 50 centimeter soft pot membrane FSR sensor for the slide readings. Now that doesn't mean a lot to me, to be totally honest. But just to be totally honest. The instruments use a TNC4 microcontroller for data processing and sound synthesis, and then an LCD display and some small 4 ohm speaker drivers. So those are the original touch instruments. Something that I wanted to mention as well is that these have been made in collaboration with the OrchLab participants. We really want it to be a collaborative process. So what has happened is we will make a prototype, quite an early version. We'll then try it out in an OrchLab workshop, or we'll even do one-to-one testing sessions with the people from the disability centres and gather feedback from them, and then that will actually influence how the instruments end up, which I think is a really valuable part of the program, because it really gives these people like the ownership over those instruments. They really feel like they're part of the process. I wonder if you could have breath triggers as an add-on for people who have that ability. Yeah, I mean, that would be great as well. That would be a really nice addition, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think these have been made with a specific sort of need in mind, but yeah, it would be nice to have almost, you know, a bit like a melodica, like a long sort of tube for people to be able to play it, but not necessarily be right up close. Great idea, Jamie. Yeah, I mean, it's really fun working on these instruments and thinking about who they're going to really be useful for and how we could adapt them. So the newest one is a harp, which we are calling the Touch Harp, which I think someone called Gowan, some of you might have been to a talk he did a few years, I think it might be a few years ago, but he still works with Drake Music, and he's been working with me to develop some of these newer instruments. And Gowan is an incredible technologist and artist, and he has made this beautiful harp. So let me show you it. Turn the volume up a little bit. So this is the newest touch instrument for OrchLab. We were working with a harpist from the orchestra, and people really just connected with the harp as an instrument, and they loved the sound, and we thought, you know, maybe this could be a good one to create a kind of more accessible, smaller version of a harp where you can change the notes on the strings quite easily. So this one was made about a year ago or something. So once again, you can change the key and the type of scale here. So someone give me a key. D. Okay, great. I'm going to change it to D. And then as far as types of scale, you have the option of major, minor, minor 7, major 7. I think that's it. Any preference? Major 7, okay, great. Major 7, there we go. So now we should be... Ah, yes, that's a lovely scale for a harp. So you may notice, one thing that I noticed is that the sound quality is much nicer with the harp, and that was something that we wanted to develop from feedback from the trombone and the oboe, is that we wanted... you know what? You have blues scales on the trombone. I think. Let me have a look. Yeah, blues scale. But that's a good shout, because I don't think we actually have that on the harp. And we should probably have the same options on each of the instruments. But hey, this is good. This is already a good learning for me as well. So yeah, Gowan designed this lovely harp. It's made out of wood. We tried it with strings, kind of, yeah, like guitar string, plastic guitar strings, I think they were, and it just didn't really work that well. So they're actually steel rods. They're completely rigid. but they're very sensitive to touch, which is brilliant. And then inside there's a sort of selection of commercial and prototype circuit boards. The harp runs on a TNC4, and yeah, various similar things to the oboe and the trombone. Did anyone have any particular questions about the touch instruments, or should we save the questions for later on? Harp must be much simpler synthesis control compared to trombone. Yeah, I think the trombone was a lot of work figuring out the slide element of it. Yeah, I can see it selling as a standard MIDI controller. Definitely, it's a beautiful thing. And you know, when we use it in the workshops, that's when we see which ones people are drawn to the most, and it's definitely the harp. And I think that's a lot to do with the visual element of it. It's a beautiful thing to look at. It sounds beautiful, and it's sort of quite easy to access as well. So those are our three touch instruments. So I realise it's already 7:30. So what I wanted to talk about as well is that we built these, and then we realised that these are fantastic, but they're only accessible to a very small group of people who take part in our workshops, and we wanted to make something that anyone could. We wanted to make instruments that anyone could use, basically. Well, most people. So we also have made some browser-based instruments that basically anyone with an internet connection can access, as long as they have a tablet, a smartphone, or a laptop. It doesn't have to be an iPad or iPhone or anything like that. It works on any tablet. Would be worth seeing if you could find a sampler app for the TNC. Yeah. Which would mean you could change the sounds and things like that, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, I'll talk about these browser-based instruments for a little while, because we don't have ages. But yeah, basically we wanted to make something that anyone could access, or more people could access than the touch instruments. So basically all you need is a device. So actually, you know what? I'm sure you all have something. So I'm going to put a link in the chat, which will take you to the OrchLab website, and it'll take you to the Soundmakers page. Vincenzo, we didn't really test this out earlier on, but could you maybe go to that link and share sound, and we could try having a look at the instruments in here as well? Let's give it a go. If it doesn't work, I can just go to the desktop.
Were you hearing anything?
No.
All right, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen again if you just want to walk me through perhaps what I should be doing over here.
Okay, cool. Oh, okay, brilliant. Yeah, so this is our sound makers. So this one's called Circle. Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there we go. So this is the kind of lead instrument. It's quite a synthy sound. You can either play, if you're using a laptop, is doing, you can either use your mouse, or you can use the bottom row of keys, the Z, X, C keys, which works really well for people who are visually impaired. Actually, we found, because they can, once they've latched onto that row, they can then play it like a little piano. You can change the key and the scale and the octave as well. So we use these in the workshops as well. So let's have a look at another one. The newest one is lines. So let's have a look at lines. We wanted to make a kind of sister version to the touch harp, where you could play chords. So this one is a harp. Now, Kenzo, I'm guessing you're on a laptop. So if you use the bottom three rows, the row starting Z, the row starting A, the row starting Q, those are your three chords. Sounds gorgeous. Such talent. Yeah, so with lines, sorry, Vincenzo, could we go back onto that one more time? We wanted to create something where you could change the chords. So it comes as standard C, F, and G, but if you go to options, you can change the chords. So you can have 3 different chords. So if you're maybe learning a song that has a few different chords, you can do it that way, or you can toggle on and off these settings on the right, which will give you less chords, basically. So if you take both of those off, and then press save, you'll just have 1 chord. There we go. Lovely stuff. Yeah, and then the other one is a percussion one, which is the first one we made, which we're actually going to rework a little bit. It's quite basic, but it's basically some percussion sounds, some orchestral percussion sounds. Yeah, it's aggressively loud. Great. Nice one. Yeah, and then squares is similar to circles. It's more of a lead instrument, but it has a kind of brassy sound. Lovely. Yeah. So this is just the start, really. We want to keep creating more. We're currently working on, I should say these were all designed by Gowan Hewitt, who is fantastic and also built the harp. And also a lot of the design ideas came from the participants. We're working on a new one at the minute. Once again, there'll be a physical touch instrument and then a sound maker, which is based on the website. So we're trying to cover the whole string family with the new one, which is not so easy. But for the touch instrument, which will be in the same realm as the trombone and the oboe and the harp, it's going to be something that is bowed. It's going to have a wooden body similar to a violin, but slightly more abstract. But you'll be able to flip between the sound of violin or cello or double bass or viola. So you kind of have the whole string family covered, hopefully. You'll be able to change key and scale and things like that, obviously. It's still in the design phase, but we're going to start testing it out soon. And then the web-based one will be similar. It'll be based on the string family to try and sort of cover that area of the orchestra. Has anyone had a go on it? Has anyone had a go at the sound makers? Does anyone have a favorite? Don't read until the end. I remember a program that ran on the Atari ST called MIDI Grid that allowed you buttons, squares that could contain notes, sequences, or loops even, and could be triggered using a mouse or pads for hats, feet, etc. Wow, that's pretty great. Yeah, I mean, our thinking behind the sound makers was just that the touch instruments are great, but they're only available to the people that we run workshops with. So we wanted to make something that we could use in workshops, but then they could continue using afterwards and continue developing those musical skills, I suppose. There was one other. Once again, sorry, Vincenzo, we didn't test this, but there was another instrument. Well, it's not quite an instrument, but on the website, if we could go back to the OrchLab website. If you don't mind sharing screen again.
Is that the original site that I shared?
Yeah. In fact, if you go to the sound makers again, that'll be fine. If you go to that link that I just put in. Great. Yeah, so if you go to sound maker up at the top and then scroll down, we have these 3 OrchPlay. They're not instruments, but they're kind of frameworks to make your own music using some of the pieces that we use in OrchLab workshops. So does anyone have a request? Would you like to choose Dvorak, Shostakovich, or Gershwin? I'll let you decide. Dvorak.
Bizarre.
Great, yeah. So this is something that was inspired by New World Symphony, and we recorded the orchestra playing loops, basically parts of the piece, and then you can create your own. The idea is that you can create your own version of it by playing these samples. So if you click on one, it should start a little loop. Adding more notes. Quite chaotic. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly show you that because that's something that we made in response to some feedback from participants that they wanted to be able to kind of create their own versions of some of the pieces. Barbara mentioned it would be good to understand how participants are using it. So if you mean how they're using the web-based instruments, in the workshops what we do is each time we have an inspiration piece, which is something that the orchestra have recently been playing. So quite recently we used The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, which is quite a difficult one to use in a workshop. It's great, but it doesn't have loads of catchy tunes. Might work better with quantization in a future version. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a good idea actually. Or just sort of locking it into a grid a little bit more. They're all tempo matched, but if you start them at the wrong time. Sorry, I'm answering Daniel's question now. But yeah, Barbara, we'll take an inspiration piece and then we'll create music using that piece of music. So we'll use the touch instruments, we'll use the sound makers, and we'll use traditional real instruments as well to write our own versions of these classical pieces. But it's all about just making classical music more accessible for disabled people, essentially. Yeah, I think that is. I might have said that in the beginning. I was late. Love it. Oh, I think, yeah, maybe I didn't specifically mention that we use pieces that the orchestra have been playing as our inspirations, but yeah, that's what we do. Okay, I don't know, did anyone have any questions? It's quite odd not being able to see anyone. Can you tell us about your funding? I can. And yeah, we're sponsored by JTI, which, if you look them up, yeah, they're a big tobacco corporation. Yeah, but they have corporate social responsibility, and they have been funding us for a few years. They fund other similar projects, and yeah, we get to do some good work with it and bring music to people who don't have a lot of music in their lives. Are you interested in additional funding? I mean, I'm not sure how that would work. We're sort of tied into 3-year cycles. Yeah, it's pretty exclusive. If anyone wants to unmute and just chat as well, feel free to.
I would have to, so they would have to raise their hand, and then I can allow.
Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. Yes, it's set up like a webinar, isn't it? Barbara.
Yeah, I really like what you're doing here, but obviously it would be a good idea maybe to allow additional funding. I'm sure there are quite a few organizations out there who might be interested to support it.
I mean, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I think the more projects like this, the better, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're tied in, obviously there are then restrictions, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's been going for about 5 or 6 years now, I think. And we've just started another 3-year cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pity.
Oh, is it? Oh, did you want to give us some money?
Yeah, that might be a possibility. But at least one of the organizations I work for.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, we could always organise to have a chat or something outside of this.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. Did anyone have any questions about the OrchLab workshops or the instruments?
It looks like Daniel has his hand raised. I'll unmute Daniel.
Oh, great.
Hi, can you hear me right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Hi. Yeah, this is really interesting stuff. Actually, my comment was kind of, well, not quite like Barbara's line. It wasn't strictly about the instruments, but just that I'm from the University of Southampton, and we got a lot of facilities here for acoustics and electronics kind of design and stuff. And a lot of this, I think, would be really good in terms of that you could get a lot of interesting student project input in this kind of stuff. There's also these things called knowledge transfer partnerships that we can do with industry if you are tied into the tobacco kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of people that would be really interested in this, and I think there would be extra funding either like alongside the industry ties that you already have.
I mean, that sounds fantastic, and it'd be great to work with, you know, students who are working on their own accessible instrument kind of designs, or, you know, improving these instruments, because we don't have huge capacity to do that. Once they're built, they're kind of built, and we have to move on. But yeah, I mean, that'd be fantastic. We should have a chat. So what is your role at the university, Daniel?
Sorry, I have to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had to raise my hand again. Sorry. Yeah, I'm acoustic consultant there. So I work with kind of external companies doing acoustics, noise, vibration stuff.
Right, cool. Interesting.
But I'm sure like the University of York do a lot of electronic music stuff as well, and I'm sure there's other people that would be like really interested in this kind of field.
Yeah, for sure. We have another branch called DM Lab, which is kind of more around hacking instruments or trying to sort of like create new things quite quickly, and I think that's an area that we'd like to develop more as well, to develop more of these kinds of instruments for sure.
Cool, yeah, and Surrey, as Graham says, they got a good department there.
Right, okay, nice. Jamie, you have your hand raised too.
Hello. Yes, this is fascinating. I can't remember her name, but I can still see her face in the mind's eye. But when I did work at York, when we were starting the UK's first music tech course, so this is 30 years ago, and really, I think the beginning of the Drake Foundation, she came along and had a look at stuff. And I'm guessing the people you deal with have all sorts of different abilities, you know, some can use their feet, some can use their hands. I don't know, this is, I mean, I think that's really cool, especially the facsimiles of real instruments. So, yeah, I mean, York is another place you might go into. And I believe Andy Hunt, who developed MIDI grid for the Atari, obviously that's no longer available because the Atari isn't. But I don't know if he's still got an interest in providing. I mean, it was originally intended to provide a sort of more generalized interface that you could use with different things. And that orchestration thing you showed is sort of like it, except you could have individual notes in as well that you could play. So you could set up loops and sequences and then, you know, actually play individual notes along with what was going on in the background. So you could actually do quite a full thing, you know. And I seem to remember it worked on touch mats as well as hand pads, or you could just use the Atari mouse.
Right.
What it was originally written for. I have no idea, you know. It basically sent MIDI out. I mean, the Atari couldn't make its own sounds, but it sent MIDI out to a synthesizer to make your noises for you.
Yeah.
So it was, anyway, I mean, that was an interesting thing, but I'm just sort of thinking aloud. There are other instruments, things like, I know they're not necessarily orchestral instruments, but something like a hurdy-gurdy might be, you know, because that actually drives the strings by your rotating handle and you touching, would you another sort of touch instrument you could look at, or a hammer dulcimer where you hit basically strings or stuff like that.
Definitely, yeah.
Different from keyboards. And actually the melodica, I mean, you could do a Supertramp thing, couldn't you? Because I mean, they actually use that as one of their instruments.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure where we'll go with it after the stringed instrument, but yeah, like you were saying earlier, it's people can play this with their nose and they can play with their elbow and their feet. So yeah, we want to keep it in that kind of vein where it's people know what it is. You know, it's like, oh, that's a trombone, but I can play it with my nose. Or...
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, there's other. You know, if you've got the fingering for the oboe, I guess you've got the fingering to do other wind instruments, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, we could do the whole range.
Well, the concept is really quite interesting because you are sort of providing that sort of thing. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they mentioned York. I don't know whether Salford would be interested in that sort of thing as well. So, you know, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is very, very, very interesting. Seeing the continuation of the work. I saw 30 plus years ago.
Yeah, that's fascinating that you saw Drake music so long ago.
Yeah, I was right really early on. I remember the lady coming. I mean, woe is me, I can't remember her first name, but
Would it have been Kareen or would it have been?
I just remember she was an older woman with longish hair.
I haven't been around that long, but yeah, it's great.
So I mean, there's all sorts of interfaces you could think of.
Absolutely, yeah. We want to maybe create some instruments that.
But I like the idea that they're challenging, and you've got to push you can do something with it, so you get immediate hit. But then if you push yourself a bit, you can do a bit more. Yeah. So if you have people who are having, have physical issues, they can actually, can almost be integrated in with their physiotherapy and things to help them work on their abilities.
Yeah, on the range of movement.
And all sorts of things. So,
yeah. I think just the most beautiful thing has been, a participant who's quite lacking in confidence, and by the end of the day, they're playing the oboe and they're playing a duet with, a really world-class level oboist, but they're just kind of on the same level.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that. And you can imagine the whole social, you could see that in the film you showed, the joy of actually just music as a social thing. I mean, that's, I think, part of, I suppose at Philharmonic level, it's probably more like an elite sport, but it's still kind of a social thing.
Definitely, and that's an interesting kind of thing it's a sort of juxtaposition. It's rubbing up against each other, where I come from a community music background where it's about collaboration, it's about everyone's input being valued equally, whereas classical music world is generally a little bit more about getting as good as you can at one thing and excelling individually. So it's an interesting kind of combination.
But you think of the number of amateur orchestras that play together, or quartets and things, and they're not exclusive, are they? They tend to be much open. I mean, I remember I went to the University of Kent, years ago now. They didn't have a music department, but they had a vibrant amateur music. They had an orchestra and things, and they did all sorts of pieces. I think they did it more for the joy of playing together and they actually produced good results as well.
Yeah, that's great. So, Barbara, not a question as such, could also most likely help on the SW development side, volunteer program. Happy to discuss that. It's called. Could you elaborate on that, Barbara, please?
It means if there was a need to develop first developers or software developers are part of that, there might be a possibility to get this included in a volunteer program. I have more than one job, so I don't want to go into details, but in my main job, I produce videos and so on, and as part of that, I work with a number of developers as well. So there is a possibility there. It's not a small company, so I'm sure there will be a few people putting up their hands to support this.
Great. That sounds great. Daniel, I could see the potential of these physical instruments working with the web software. So you just have one system to maintain, develop, and even maybe perform with others over a network if you can get the latency small enough. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely bringing the the web-based instruments and the touch instruments closer together. So each time it's a kind of sister instrument. So this time it's going to be stringed. Last time it was the harp, the two different types of harp. But yeah, you could take it to another level and kind of combine the same software. Or yeah, it's possible. Did anyone have any other questions? I think such protocols have been developed due to COVID. There may even be an AES standard on it for collaboration playing over the net. Sorry, could you elaborate on that as well? I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Okay, just that one of the consequences of COVID is, musicians wanted to play together to keep their jobs going and things. So actually quite a lot of work was done on protocols that had low latency over the network.
Yes. You're referring to
so that
latency.
you can actually do this, the collaboration over the net, because I noticed was a Daniel, working with web software so that you can perform with each other over the network.
Yeah, I mean, there are some incredible bits of software where there's almost no latency at all now, which is staggering. But I mean, we've been doing a lot of music workshops on Zoom over COVID.
Yeah, well, Zoom's not necessarily the best thing because there is a bit of latency there, but sometimes quite a lot of latency. But even with latency, it can be made to work. I seem to remember someone up in Scotland doing one of these presentations where she was working on that sort of collaboration, even over things as difficult as Zoom, for want of a better term.
Yeah, that was a challenging time. But it's nice that we're just doing in-person workshops now.
Yes, I'm sure it makes it easier, but I'm saying it's, if you just given this Daniel's suggestion, I think there may actually be protocols and possibly even standards now for actually doing that sort of work where you can have remote collaboration, not necessarily requiring, fiber to the home type connections. So somebody can maybe help me out here because that's well outside my field.
I could. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are some cloud collaboration media workflows. Some like Waves seem to be doing that with Audinate. So I think there is a way to do this within the 20 millisecond kind of latency, which is still manageable, as opposed to doing it over Zoom. It's a bit challenging when it comes to networking tunnels from on-prem to cloud, but that's definitely an approach or a workflow you could experiment with.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to share some of our work with you.
Well, if there are no other questions, Dav, thank you very much for taking the time. Is there any way for everybody to reach you, where they can know more about this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll drop my email into the
Please.
chat. Yeah, and I mean, there's lots more information on the website that I haven't gone into, so feel free to have a browse on the OrchLab website. There you go. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope it
Same
was.
here. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.